Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show live. Got a little crack in my throat there, almost lost it. And we're starting out our show live with our fantastic guest, special guest, Preacher Moss. We got him back again. Oh, yeah, I love it. I love starting out with Bob. Preacher, how you doing, man?
You know, man, lies God, keep it simple. You know what we do?
What you do, man?
I don't know, man. I'm turning to an old man at warp speed. I'm using old man terms. Like, I woke up on this side of the dirt this morning. I'm saying stuff like that. It's good to be seen. I'm saying stuff like that.
Well, I'm glad you're here, man. I'm glad you're here with us because this is a special show today because, you know, we had you here a while ago. And when we first started doing our shows, and now things have changed a little bit. And I want to make sure.
I like the shirt too. I like.
Oh, you like the shirt?
I thought it was a green screen, but I was like, oh, that's
no, man. This
Mark got a green screen shirt.
Color.
Got a green screen. Usually the background's behind you. Mark got it on his shirt.
Got it right on my shirt. I want to make sure they can see me.
Yeah, brother, I know.
Well, let me tell you, man, we're gonna keep you all the way throughout the show today, Preacher Moss.
All right,
all the way throughout the show, man. You know, I'm gonna just take time to make sure I do what I do every time. I say hello to all the small business owners out there. I say hello to the Democrats who are out there, soon to be small business owners. And I tell them one thing: fantastic show, fantastic guests, and it is Woke Wednesday. Woke Wednesday is happening. It's happening now.
We're here, bro. Get the sleep out your eye. If you're woke, you can't have sleep in your eye, Mark. That's my only thing.
It's a bad look.
Yeah, it's
want to get that sleep right out there. If there's anything you want to move it out
and pluck it.
Just get it out of there. Get it out of there.
Well, no eye boogers. This is not eye booger TV.
That's right, because we got enough.
The Muslims don't drink, no pork. And no eye boogers. No eye boogers, brother.
I thought there was something about the shoes. What was that?
I'm just saying. I'm making that up. That's from.
You're making it up.
I'm making up. There's 5 pillars of Islam. I just gave you 5.5. No eye boogers.
It's always good. Everybody can use one of those. But you know what, Preach?
Yes, sir.
You're going into the right thing because as I go into this part of the show, I tell people, guess what? We talk about COVID. If you haven't gotten that shot, you need to get the shot. And if you haven't,
I don't get it.
Continue to do your research and get the shot. What are you saying?
Even a heroin addict at some point in time are going, you know what?
At some
I
point,
might have a problem.
There's a problem. We got variants out there. Those variants, man, are taking out a lot of people.
Even the heroin addicts are getting vaccinated.
That's right.
Yeah, they were like, "Are you ready for your shot?" He was like, "They're like, no, roll up your sleeve, Mark. You ready for your your sleeve? Oh,
not that one.
I'm sorry. You don't go here. It don't go there."
Folks, you can't pay for good entertainment like this. So I tell you what, some of the most fantastic guests.
Welcome
to our show.
Welcome to We Might Be Going to Hell on Wednesday with Mark Cannon and Preacher Moss.
Informational, informative, informal, and engaging, and funny too.
That's right. I don't have a place in hell, but I might have a timeshare. All right.
I'm telling you now, folks, if you haven't gotten your shot, please get your shot. We want you to be here through all of the holidays. I don't care how you pray or who you pray to, or if you don't pray, you're loved on this show. So you got to get that shot. That's my advice. It's on you, but go ahead and get it. You know what the doctors are saying. Preach, you got anything else to say on that? Because I'm just going to let it go at that.
Hey, look, there's really no intervention. There's really no intervention when you don't want to get a vaccine.
Okay.
So what I would suggest is everybody who doesn't want to get a vaccine, just meet in one place.
Yeah.
And hold on to your constitutional rights in one space and call for one another and call me in 30 days.
Oh Lord.
If you're still around.
There it is. You folks heard it from the top of the table. But you know, I'm gonna roll right from there talking about that COVID thing.
Mark, all I'm just saying is look.
What you saying now?
Look, the proof is in the pudding, man.
It's already in the pudding.
Look, remember Herman Cain?
Yes.
Herman Cain had no reason to go to a rally with a bunch of white people. Let's just put a period right there. Okay? He goes, you beat cancer, 2-3 times. You taking a picture with other black folk that they can get up to this rally with no, dude, he checked out. And I'm like, that's it. I'm like, look, that's it.
He decided he decided that he would take chances on going to a rally with the people he's
the Godfather pizza
and
man.
It was not a good idea.
Yeah, well, you're not coming
Looking
back.
back.
All I'm saying is, hey, that picture, that was the last one he took. And all due respect, it's one of the things where, Mike's one thing is like, this is a tragedy for people who suffer with COVID, die from COVID. There's a plethora of people who passed away from COVID. There was no vaccine.
None.
It was dropping. There was no vaccine.
None.
Like up until March of last year, there really was no vaccine, Mark. Right?
No vaccine.
Okay. These people passed away with no vaccine. I think more people passed away than we had the vaccine. You see what I'm saying? Like I can't. This is what they say in prison. They got a term in prison for what they're going to do. It says you are sitting on TV watching the sofa. That's what this is.
Listen, please, folks, take the vaccine. That's what I'm going to tell you. And we've joked about it, but you got to take it, man. I haven't gotten my third shot.
I got my booster. I got yours too.
Huh?
I got my booster. I got yours too. I signed up as you.
Booster, man. I got it.
I went at Preacher Moss and Mark Kennedy at the same time. They said, Preacher Moss, Mark Kennedy, like, we're here. I gave both arms, Mark.
And there's another reason why you need to get your booster. You got people going in and getting 2 boosters.
I mean, who thought of the word boost? And we're just thinking shots now. People are not even shoplifting and walking here to booster. Yeah, over that line.
I'm getting my booster.
I mean, but
I'm gonna get my booster this week too.
Dude, and the stories are the same. I told people don't get the vaccine. I like to say now, get the vaccine. Dude, it wouldn't be funny. It's tragic because I've seen these stories before. People take them. I know I was wrong. I'm like,
I don't want to laugh on anybody's situation that wasn't.
Black preachers, stop it, Mark.
Some of the
Black preachers. The Lord told me I don't need the vaccine. The Lord told me to come in here and I don't need.
You better take that vaccine. That's all. You know what, man?
Mark, the black preacher, I'm like, don't you know God created vaccine too, fool?
He created you. He created the people that made the vaccine, and he also made it available for you. There's a lot of people who can't get it. So,
but here's the thing, though.
Hard for me to comprehend why people would not take it.
Now here's a somber mark, though. This is a somber note, though, Mark.
What's that, sir?
Let me get my drink here.
Okay.
I'm drinking diet water, everybody.
Well, I'm drinking ginger ale.
What people don't realize, man, was there's a very, very relevant anti-vax movement before this vaccine ever came out.
Yes, I was.
And that anti-vax movement dealt with MMR,
right,
mumps,
right.
measles, and rubella, or measles, mumps, rubella. I always get it mixed up.
Yeah.
And this was the argument dealing with, we don't want our kids vaccinated going into the schools. Like our kids, and they were saying that some of the kids develop complication. Among them was autism.
Yeah, autism.
Okay.
And that's really where that crew came from. People were blaming some of the
Kennedy,
vaccination
folks like that,
causing some people being on the spectrum of autism. But there was no proof of it, really.
Now the problem is, you put that in a space where you have so much misinformation.
It just
spreads. It's like a tsunami.
It's like a tsunami, exactly.
It's like dumb meets stupid, and you put them together, and it's like, hey, throw in people who are emotional but do absolutely no research.
And they all got a platform. Everybody has a platform on social media. Everybody has one.
So I mean, hell, you got one, Mark. You got one. I got one. Like the world going a handbasket. But listen though, the fact that but we get up and we do shows and we have something that says, for me, as a journalist, I'm like, this is something about journalistic integrity. I'm not going to get up here and tell you about something that I didn't research.
Absolutely.
Or something that I didn't try and find a contrasting opinion on from myself.
Absolutely.
I look for something to change what I've said or to challenge what I don't need other people. I'm doing that on my own. What you have now is that people are in the opinion business, but they're not in the research business.
Well, that's called the editorial business, and editorial is not news. And we can get into that because that's all you have out there, and that's what kind of got number 45 to where he's gotten. He knew how to get in the news, but not the news, but in the editorial business where nobody's fact checking you, and you can just say whatever you want to.
Well, I think the thing with 45 and Roger Stone is they did something that's really, really interesting. And this is something I think when we peel back the layers 10, 12 years from now, you're going to find they did the same thing with this whole idea of vaccination stuff. It's a cut and run, Mark. Essentially, the whole idea of stop the steal, it didn't happen in the 2020 elections. They were running that thing, that idea back in 2016, 2014 to see if it was sticky.
Just keep
you're talking about sticky.
Well, if you say it enough, it becomes sticky.
Yeah.
You know it's not true. It becomes an urban legend.
They made an urban legend, and they said, I'm going to take it to the people. I said this yesterday.
Listen, preacher, it is nothing but advertising. Advertising works on the same principle. Keep repeating it, keep showing it.
It's the rule of the threes in comedy.
Subconscious, whether or not they like that particular product or not. They've been inundated with it.
Well, it's the rule of the threes in comedy.
Exactly.
It's the rule of the threes. And I think the other thing is, what we're dealing with now and the problem with trying to get out a message about vaccination.
Right.
Did you see the thing hanging, the Kenny G documentary?
Oh, I saw it out there, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, you should watch that because they're talking about music, but it's really a social statement. It's really a social parallel. When they talk about Kenny G and traditional jazz music and the tension, I'm going to be honest, full disclosure, I'm not particularly a Kenny G fan. You made a lot of money. I'm not hating on you making your money. You're the most famous instrumentalist in the world.
Everybody loves Kenny G. A lot of people do. And I like Kenny G. He is who he is.
He is what it is. but to a jazz purist, I understand why they're angry.
Well,
let me explain. Let me explain.
You gonna let me talk about voting rights first?
Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm messing with you. Go ahead. That's going.
I'm talking about the vaccination thing.
Tell me about Kenny G.
And this is going to tie into your conversation about voting rights.
Okay.
Just give me a minute to flow here. Flow. Okay. Last time I was here, I was dealing. I'm trying to flow, Mark. Look, I'm free. Look.
Are you sure? Go ahead.
They said the difference between jazz and what Kenny G does, and this is really important. And condolences to our brother Gregory Tate that passed away. Huge.
Explain. Everybody doesn't know.
Black cultural critic, music critic. He turned me on to Living Color, black rock musicians, Flyboys and the Buttermilk, social critique. My favorite one, Everything But the Burden, What White People Take Away from Black Culture. This is mind-blowing stuff.
Okay.
So he's a giant. This is an L. If Cornel West goes, damn, it's an L.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
L. But they would say, and this sounds like something that Gregory Tate would say, Mark.
Right.
They were talking about the difference between Kenny G and traditional jazz legends.
Okay.
The music. And they were saying in traditional jazz music, there's a call and response. That when the music is made is communal, and the precipice and the foundation of music is that there's musical contribution. Right. So there's a bass for a reason, there's a piano for a reason, there's a drum for a reason, and everybody, the excellence of the band is in contribution. Right. Kenny G's music is not about contribution. I'm the primary instrument. Wait. I'm the primary instrument. The spotlight is on me.
Exactly.
And the critic said this. He said, real jazz is like sex. Kenny G's music is like masturbation.
That is an apt explanation of what it's all about.
And here's the thing, and we're gonna get into voting rights.
Okay, we're gonna get into voting rights.
We're gonna get into voting rights, and I'm like,
okay, go ahead. We're back.
All right, we're back. Thanks for that. Thanks for the interruption. No, I'm just kidding.
Go ahead.
No, they were saying in jazz, but I think this is a social thing. This is a social issue. Mark, they were saying that when people ask Kenny G about the music, he won't say it's jazz. He won't say it's not jazz.
It is jazz. It's just a different type of jazz.
Let me finish though.
Okay, all right.
But what he does when he does that is he fails to recognize the contribution. He's borrowing from the contribution of jazz, but when he gets over in these spaces right here, he's not saying it. So you have a lot of people who they don't know any other types of jazz.
And they think
that's what they hear.
Right.
He's not saying that I borrow from this tradition. So let's get into voting rights is the fact that the problem with a lot of guys with Kenny G is the fact that, listen, man, for you to do what you do, it's almost like fake news. It has to be a young thing. It has to be a thing where you can't go back and question or investigate the stuff that came before it. So when you get into voting rights, particularly now, you find us having some of the same arguments that we were having 30, 40, 50 years ago because the proponents are cut off. They're not learning about voting rights. They're not learning about registration. They're not learning about the power of the vote. Or when they're learning it, it's in a voting season. It's not something that's been, I want to say, matured along the way. Like you should be rolling up, understanding the importance of voting. But you have situations now, they don't really teach civics classes in school anymore. That's number one. Number two is, if everything about voting is, I'm going to keep you from voting, you have a decision to make. Do I turn it in and say, well, I'm going to try and find out why they don't want me to vote? Or the other part of it, and you jump in on it, it's like, well, damn, it doesn't matter if I vote or not because the die has already been cast with gerrymandering.
Well, there's a lot of people that say a lot of things. We've got to fight a lot of bad stuff that's out there to stopping people from doing that. But that's the reason why I try to get people activated and agitated. And I just want to tell people, reason why I put him out there. Can you hear me talking when that's out there? Can you hear me talking when that's playing?
No, not at all, bro.
Oh,
It mutes you.
Say it again. But listen,
yeah, it's mute. Could you please repeat?
It's please repeat. But what's kind of funny is, wait a minute. You're supposed to work a different way, but I don't know why it's doing that. I'm going to try it one more time, but we'll do that next time. What I was saying is people need to look at what John Lewis has done out there and what so many people in the civil rights era, a lot of African Americans, a lot of Americans of every stripe and every color. And it goes with just what you're saying, Preach. People are having to go back and redo stuff that we've already done. What is the sense in creating all of this confusion and all of these things that are going on around voting rights, when in fact we've already addressed this issue, laws were in place, and now we have to go again. Now it's not really a question, because I know you know the answer to it, but a lot of other people may not know the answer to it, and you've already said it. The reason why this is going the way it's going, and it's because people have not gotten out there and learned what they needed to learn in a basic civics class. And then the rest of it, in my mind, is all about power. It's about what do you call it? The Reconstruction 2.0. People know if you can't vote.
Yeah, I mean, if you
cannot get the people in Congress that are going to pass the sort of policies and laws that are the type of Congress people that you would want to have on a state, local.
I guess my thing, Mark, is
I'm over my words, but go ahead.
I'm sorry, brother.
No, it's okay. It was me.
Let me ask you this question, man.
Yeah.
This is me. We're having a conversation.
Right. I
watch people in the Senate, and I do things. You probably do these things too. I look at a Mitch McConnell. I look at a Mitch McConnell. I'm like, what is Mitch, about 175 years old?
Give or take a year or two.
I think he owned slaves. I think he still has two. But I'm like, what's your voting record? Like, what was your voting record when Black people couldn't vote? Like, I really, because there's such a thing as like there's a mandate, if you will, to I'm going to support voting rights. But I have a feeling when I look at these, I'm like, push come to shove, in Kentucky in 1964, you weren't on the front line. You weren't on the front line. And those feelings, I feel like, are embedded, meaning that they tolerate Blacks and Latinos having votes, having voting rights. They tolerate it, but they don't support it. Well, and I'm like, it's a different conundrum when you get people in a room. You and I had this conversation when Trump got elected. I mean, everybody thought it was a lock, but it's interesting when people get in a room and they start having these conversations and these emotions come up about, Mitch McConnell back in, 19, these feelings, and there's the anonymity of voting, where if I vote and we vote for Trump, you can't come to my job and say you voted for Trump or blah, blah, blah. It's that anonymity. And I'm like, we're seeing that now. Just recently you had, I wish I'd have given you the show that I did yesterday on the shout out show, which was white nationalist candidates. Mm-hmm. White nationalist candidates are applying. They're running for office.
Right.
And they feel like, hey, listen, we have a premise, we have a foundation to do so. And we ain't talking about, late night cross burnings. No, they are saying, listen, we have a political agenda that's tied to reclaiming America. That's the famous words. Reclaiming America. We must reclaim America. And under this auspices, man, you have people that in the GOP who are legitimate politicians. They're now afraid to go against that agenda because they feel like they'll be replaced.
Well, let's keep this simple. I think people try to complicate this too much. This is simply about power.
Yeah.
Now, how am I going to get power? And power in political terms means in this country, and how our Congress works is you need 51 votes in the Senate, and you need 400 and what's the 200 and do the math for 50 plus 1% in the House with 435 divided by 2. Do the math, have one extra. That's all you need to win. It's simple math. If you have the number of people in place and you have a president that is in the office who's willing to sign whatever legislation and laws that come out of that body, that's power. That's political power in this country. Now, how do you do something? How do you stop people from getting that political power? Is you make it impossible or very difficult for them to vote so that they can't put the numbers and butts in the seat in the Congress, House of Representatives, and the Senate so that they can get the things that they want or stop things from happening that they don't want to happen. So I just think you need to keep it simple and tell people, I don't care whether you like to vote, you think your vote's not worth nothing. Listen, if you go to the store and saying your vote is worth nothing, it's like going to the store, taking $100 bill out of your pocket and saying, oh, how much is that? They'll say, oh, that's a quarter. You give the person $100 and say, well, it's my money's not worth anything. Just, give me whatever it is for a quarter, and you keep the other $99.75. Now that's ridiculous. You wouldn't do that. Nobody would. And it's the same thing with your vote. It's just a simple transaction, but those transactions have budget priorities. So I try to keep it simple for people. Go and vote for the person who is going to do the things that you need to get done, and so that you can have the things you need for your families and for your neighborhood. Just keep it simple. And if you try to make it too complicated, then people get into these ridiculous conversations. I mean, go ahead. You're my guest, and I'm dominating the talk here. So you push back at that if you don't think we need to keep it simple. So I think that's part of the problem. They make it complicated.
Well, I think it's an issue when you have people that are not thoroughly informed. Right. I mean, from where I look at it, Virginia took a huge L in the gubernatorial race because
we did.
They're not informed. You talk about what are the dinner table talks. Critical race theory is exactly that. It's a theory. It's not a curriculum that's particularly taught. And if you put it in the hands of people who don't know, and I said this yesterday, and maybe this will make sense to you viewers. As African Americans, when we talk about white nationalism and white racism, anti-black racism, if you will, we delineate it, and it's tied to a certain type of history, and the whole idea of white supremacy, white right movement, white power movements, oppressing black people has been around for years. What we haven't taken into account, Mark, is that these white races will oppress white people too. Well, and they figured out the formula. They have 45 that opened the lid on this thing in some regards to oppress other white people. They ain't got time for us. We ain't got time for you.
Listen, Preacher Moss, people don't know their history. When the Constitution was written and put into place, it was only white men who owned land who could vote. Women could not vote. Certainly, if you were enslaved, you couldn't vote.
Native Americans,
you couldn't vote. So they have been oppressing
everybody
the whole time, along with everyone else. So the thing that they try to do now, and this is a sales game, they're trying to convince people that the good things that the Democratic Party is trying to do for people and willing to have an exchange of ideas and policies with people on the other side of the aisle, well, they don't even want to do that. They don't want to have a conversation. All they want to talk about is the election is rigged, and that's basically it.
Well, it's a party of absolutism.
So
it's a party of absolutism.
You can't have a conversation with someone who says heads I win, tails you lose. So it's that kind of thing. Who's going to have a conversation?
Is we finished or is we through? To quote Birdman, is we finished or is we through?
Either way, it's not good. So you're not going to sit there. I don't know any person, if there was a Jewish person during World War II who would sit down with an avowed Nazi and have a conversation with them about what are we going to compromise on. If people don't think you have a right to exist, what is there to talk about? And that is where we are finding ourselves.
Why are we still having these conversations? I've said on my show numerous times, speaking to African Americans in particular.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're talking from an African American standpoint, but I think it's a wider lens than that.
No, it's a wider lens. But I've said this in terms of African Americans in terms of political process.
Right.
There's a saying that says if it's broke, don't fix it.
Right.
If it's always been broke, then it's never been fixed. Right. So I'm literally looking at it. I'm like, listen, man, in some regards, vote, but you got to circle your wagons. Like, this is a toxic thing. I am watching very, very unhealthy politics.
Right.
At the national level, at a local level, regional level. I'm looking at very unhealthy politics. And I'm like, listen, you can throw your hat into that thing, or you can say, listen, on the side of self-preservation, let's build our own model whereby we don't need to engage that. We don't need to put emotional and spiritual support to that because it's toxic, if you will.
Right.
It's unhealthy. And stepping back, going, well, let's go ahead and look at what we have, our resources, and build a consortium. One of the dopest and meanest conversations I ever had, Mark, was with may Allah be pleased with him, Dick Gregory.
Yeah.
Based on a joke I did in DC. I was joking about it's too many political parties. I was like, you got the Republicans, the Democrats, Libertarian Party. I said, you got the Sweet Tea Party. I said, for Black Republicans that hate themselves, you got the Sweet Tea Party. It was a funny joke. But when your teacher comes up and goes, oh, so you're making a joke about not doing your homework, sir? He said, I'm tired of you young guys. Bleep, 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 bleep. He said, where's the Black Political Action Committee? He said, we old now. We can't do. I'm like, oh, it was a joke. Yeah, hey, jokey. He said, wasn't a joke. I said, you're right. He says, and I said it wasn't. I said, I made fun of the fact that we're talking about inactivity.
Well, we're
talking about one of the greatest intellectual bases ever created in the world with African American culture right here, right now. Right. We haven't figured out how to put together our own political action committee that's based on the fact that it can be framed in terms of what's needed at local levels. We haven't done it. We're still kind of hoping.
Well,
wishing that this system is going to work. And I'm like, it does. I'm not like, Elijah Muhammad and them back in the day saying we ain't going to take part of the political process. I'm not saying that. I'm saying look at it. You have to engage it because you have to be able to make some very, very articulate and very, very meaningful, impactful decisions in terms of how you now are going to brand yourself to your folks.
Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of what I see it's going on now. And I won't, I'm going to use a term, old school and new school, but I don't think it's so much old school and new schools. I'm talking about being strategic and intentional with your actions and acting as a group. Since we are talking about, in this particular case, whether it's the African-American community or whether it's the Democrats, we have to be intentional and strategic in what we do with our resources and how we communicate to each other and to other people who we're trying to get involved in what we're trying to do. I think, we need to have all of the above. For example, you've got what's his name? Dick Gregory's boy. He's on Sirius XM, and
Joe Madison.
He's out there now doing the same thing Dick Gregory.
Is he still fasting?
He's still fasting. Randall Robinson did the same thing around South Africa.
Yes.
You had the other guy, if you remember back in the 80s with the homeless, it was the white guy that was doing that with Mitch, I forget his name. Mitch Snyder. It's a very good strategy. I think even it comes from Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi did some of that as well, I believe, with his nonviolent movement. So that's a strategy. Then you have the strategy that took place during the George Floyd protests, which people being active and just coming out in large numbers, and people from all walks saying, we're not going to put up with this. You have the same thing when you saw all these women coming out there with the once 45 was elected with the pussycat hats. But the point of it is, what I tell people is you need to activate and agitate. You need a simple message. You need to stay in the streets, put pressure on the people who are in elected office, put pressure on the corporations, and also put pressure on ourselves to be strategic and intentional and saying, here are the things that we want. We've already got those bills out there. For example, we've got HR 1, which is the For the People Act. We've got HR 4, which is the John Lewis Act. And you've got the Senate, the act that's in the Senate right now. All around voting rights, but that pressure has to be sustained. And then you still have the George Floyd Act that still needs to get passed. So we've got all these things that are sort of bottled up coming out of the House of Representatives, but they're not going to get passed if we don't stay the course. So how do you say the right things to people, keep them activated, keep them agitated, so things like just happened in Virginia doesn't happen again when it comes up to losing the House, if that happens in the next election coming up? We can't afford to have that happen.
I feel honestly, I feel like we're going to lose the House.
Well, I was thinking something more positive.
No, I'll be honest. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, why do you think that? Okay, why do you think that?
Given like I feel, here's the deal. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna put it out here.
Yeah.
And I mean it in the best of spirits.
Okay.
In the best of spirits.
All right. Okay. I'm listening to you here, Preacher Moss.
Listen,
you got to give us some magic here, man.
It is. The Democratic Party, as I see it,
right, has
not capitalized on being preemptive. Let me hearken you back to 9/11. George Bush issues in this whole idea of preemptive strikes, right? Which means if I think you're harboring a terrorist, I'm going to light you up. And then you go after a couple years and then you have stand your ground, which is if I feel threatened, if I think you're going to do something to me, I now have the ability. Listen, we need to be preemptive. This is situational. We are reacting too much and not being in a space where we're going to dictate this narration, Stop the Steal started in 2014. Stop the Steal. It's like they were doing A/B testing for almost 4 or 5 years. I'm like, listen, Democrats, love you, but listen, you got to learn how to fight. You got to.
So what is your intentional, strategic communication that you would say that you would give to folks who need to approach these things in different ways? I have some very exciting elections that I believe are coming up now. Right now with Stacey Abrams running in Georgia.
Yes.
Those 2 senators.
That's what I mean.
Texas, you've got the gentleman, Tebow, or whatever his name is. Beto running down there for, I think, the Senate or either the governor. I think he's running for the governorship in Texas.
But here's the thing with Stacey Abrams.
Stacey, she got receipts. She does the work.
But here's the thing with Stacey Abrams.
Mm-hmm.
Stacey Abrams thinks differently. She doesn't look at voting in terms of, oh, we're going to vote. We're not. Mm-hmm. He created an entire blue ocean strategy for voting.
Right.
He said, I'm going to frame it as a business, as opposed to running over here with everybody talking about voting rights, voting rights, voting rights, and that's the competition to talk about voting rights. She said, I'm going to develop here an apparatus that's going to get people educated to the vote, tell them where to vote, tell them here are the tricks that people, this is a killer. Tell them here are the tricks that people are going to use to keep you from voting. Here is the words and the conversations they're going to get to dissuade you from voting. She creates this whole different nomenclature for new people, new voters, and they showed up in Georgia, turned the election.
But that's not the only reason why they did it. I think what you're leaving out too, preachers, we had a candidate in the opposition party who was so vile and so contemptible that people were willing to do whatever they needed to do to get that person out. But I don't think we have that this time around. So you need, I think negative ads work, but I also believe what works even better than negative ads is people having something to become engaged about. Positive.
She made voting
cool.
She made voting in Georgia.
Mm-hmm. I've been to Atlanta. I saw what they did down in that area and across Georgia.
No,
man.
I'm just saying she made voting a badge of honor.
Right.
In Georgia. She reframed voting and she gave it lineage and history to a history of change. Not just the next midterm or that. They had an entire warehouse of history of how voting works.
It's got to be a movement. It can't be just some hot moment at the time. It can't be just an Emmett Till situation or just a George Floyd.
That's what I was saying, though. It's
people
like
need to understand.
She moved it away. Right. She moved it away from situational voting, and the way she did it was when she got robbed out of her opportunity.
Right.
Instead of sitting around going, I'm going to figure out what, she goes right to work.
Right.
They come up with these organizations. I can't remember the name of the organization. I'm getting old. But the organizations are blue ocean organizations. And what they presented to vote was, this is your opportunity to do something. This is an opportunity to, it's almost like, hey, in Birmingham, Alabama, you had 4 little girls who were killed in the church. One of my mentors, God, Allah be pleased with him. My big brother, Harry Weber. He was the first artistic director of Motown, Mark. His campaigns were worldwide. They're world-class campaigns. Right. My Bloney has a first name. I'm stuck on Band-Aids. Band-Aids stuck on me at 4. Quality is job 1. The most important one, United Negro College Fund, and mine is a terrible thing to waste. You hear what I'm saying?
This is his. Well, these are the sort of simple communication techniques you need. You don't need a long.
Well, I'm gonna
go ahead. I know you're going somewhere with it.
I'm gonna go with it, and then you jump in.
Okay.
He worked for Adam Clayton Powell, and right around the Voting Act in 1964, you had a situation where 4 little girls were killed in Birmingham in a church bombing.
Right.
And he recollects that Adam Clayton Powell was pissed. He was like, we need movement now, but he didn't know how to do it. Harry Weber, like I said, is the first artistic director for Motown. You know what the campaign they did, Mark? They sent out postcards at Christmas. And it was of a church. I wish I could give you the graphic. It's a postcard of a church with crosses, 4 crosses coming out of there. And it basically said, everybody won't be able to celebrate Christmas this year.
Yeah.
And they sent it out to every politician, every senator, every congressperson, on down the line. Adam Clayton Powell sent that out, and the emotional clarity that this thing gave, it cleaned up a lot of hearts about, you know what are we doing as a nation, as a country? We denied, these 4 little girls, they're not even going to get the vote. They weren't even of voting age. This is how violent, and this is a snapshot of our country.
Well,
and they use that, Mark. It's just not talked about enough. Well, they did that in conjunction with MLK, and that was a large push the behind the scenes, if you will, the behind the scenes of how the Voting Act gathers steam moving forward. That's all I have to say.
Well, I'll just say this. I'm going to take this down to one more granular level. Basically, people want to know how much you care rather than how much you actually know. And when they want to know how much you care, that's when they're making an emotional connection. And the card with that graphic going to congressmen and various different folks was about making an emotional connection with people. But when we fast forward to 2021, where you have babies who are being shot with AR-15s in Connecticut, and people are unwilling to do anything. When people see the vile sort of things that have happened, where in the past, most Americans would have trouble with all these multiple shootings and things that go on. So when I say we have to be a little more creative and we have to be a little more intentional and strategic on how we do things, we need to look at the tools that we have out here now with the social media and getting the best and the brightest who can come up with probably a multiple sort of pattern of different approaches to have that same sort of effect for young people, for older people, for the internet, for the television, for the printed press, along with having people like Stacey Abrams, who has done the homework to create the infrastructure to get people, to give people the ability to make it through that whole voting maze that they have to go through when they're going to be putting up so many different things and obstacles in order to suppress the vote. Here's what you need to do. So it really is a collection of different things. I agree with what you said. You need that emotional thing. You need people to know the process. And then you also need people to be committed. But I think the emotional thing makes them committed, but you got to keep that in front of people. And to be honest, I've seen a lot of things in the popular zeitgeist, or just the popular media, that's trying to bring down the level of racial animosity, or for young people to feel like, particularly we're talking about white people, that somehow something is being taken from them when in fact nothing is. But I don't focus on that. We need to focus on what I said before, on the stuff that you were talking about. Because if we find a way to do that and keep that with our foot to the pedal on that, and keep that at a level field and just stay on that, we're going to be able to get these things done. Because I don't think there's anything you can do to talk to people who, on the other side of the fence, don't have any policy or not talking any logic. So you really can't have a conversation with them. That means you need to concentrate on your folks, getting them to the polls, doing the messaging part, and doing the technical strategic part of getting them through all of these wickets to make sure this voter suppression doesn't work, and having the right sort of candidates that give that message. That's what I believe needs to happen. And now, exactly how that happens, Stacey made it happen. We made it happen last time, but we need to find a way to keep it like that every year. What do you think?
Let me say this, Democrats, Mark, you know the game. It's just like being black. There's no off season.
There's no off season, man. You black wherever you go. You can't get away from it.
The mantra says,
I don't care how many degrees you have. I don't care how big a car or a home you drive. It doesn't matter to these fools out there.
One of my mantras is, winners win. When they don't win, they do what? They work harder. Winners win when they do win. What do they do? What? They work harder.
It's never over. And that's what I'm trying to tell you. So don't waste your time. It takes me back to my football days, and I played a lot of sports, through college, and you cannot concentrate on what the other team is going to do. Only thing that you can do is concentrate on what you're going to execute, so that you can take full advantage of the things you do the best and full advantage of the weaknesses that you've identified in the opposition. Any other reason, you shouldn't be paying attention to them. You should be focusing on your game. And I think that's what we need to do more of. But we need a simple plan.
So I'm going to throw out a word.
Go ahead.
For the party. I live by this word.
Okay, go ahead.
The term is called deliberate practice.
Deliberate, intentional.
Deliberate practice. It was out of a book called Talent is Overrated by Jeffrey Colvin. And what it said was, essentially, everybody has a talent, right?
Yes.
It takes skill to get paid for the talent, and it takes discipline to maintain the skill. Let me throw this out.
Mm-hmm.
People like Michael Jordan, great musicians like Charlie Bird Parker or Coltrane or even Miles, didn't get good just by practicing. They got good by understanding practice, but understanding that practice wasn't enough. It's sort of like you practice with your team,
right?
For 2 hours, everybody goes home. Except you, Mark. You wave, everybody goes home, and then you sneak back in the gym and you put up another 2 hours worth of basketball shots or catching passes, and nobody sees it.
Right.
I play in a band. You and I play in a band. Hey man, it's good. I go home. What you go? I'm going to sleep. I'm not going to sleep. I'm like Coltrane. I just finished playing at Minton's in New York City. I got off at 3 a.m. I went home to Inglewood. And guess what I did, Mark? I played another 2 hours in my. And what it is, brothers and sisters who are watching, it means that you develop muscle memory. So that even when you start off wrong, your form is wrong. When you get to the moment of truth, your form straightens out because you rehearsed it over and over and over and over again. I give credit to the Republican Party because their machine emphasizes deliberate practice.
No, I think they emphasize loyalty in when I say
no, Mark. No. It's not loyalty.
I don't. Maybe that's the wrong word.
I'm saying
I think
they emphasize deliberate practice. But here's the deal: for a lot of people that are doing deliberate practice, their form is wrong. You're working out the wrong way.
Wait.
All right, you're working out. You ain't got nobody spotting you with 500 pounds on the rack. You know, if something crush your chest and just get another person there, go ahead, you do it too. They don't care. People are disposable. I appreciate the nastiness of the Republican Party because everybody's disposable. It is fun to watch. This would be great TV. This would be a great Netflix series if it wasn't true.
It's true, man.
If it wasn't non-fiction, we're watching it every day. So, and that's my thing. I'm like, yeah. You ever see how do you get white man scared of a white man that's out of work? You ain't never seen that before in your life. A white man that's not working scared all the white men out of working. The model is dumbfounded. He's not your boss, but you're worried about getting fired.
Well, listen, you have the Democrats on the other side, and I'm a Democrat, but we've got a big tent party. But listen, when you have everybody pretty much on the same page, and you just have two senators who are standing in the way of delivering what it is we've been talking about for a number of years and got everybody to do, and more voters showed up than ever. And now these folks are sitting in the way. We kind of know why they're sitting in the way. What does a party do when you have people like that who are standing in the way of progress? And I'm going to get into all the different details and mechanisms. What do you do about that? Because that's that's discipline that needs to be there, man.
Okay, I'm
they can't just be out for themselves.
Hey, look, I'm gonna tell you. First of all, you figure out in a certain situation how this thing is handled in-house. And this is the strategic part. You figure out how people are going to move, and part of your deliberate practice is learning how people are going to move before they move it. Denzel said, "This is chestnut. This is chestnut checkers."
Records.
I
Well,
can tell, Mark. People when they make decisions, particularly poor decisions or selfish decisions, leave all kind of breadcrumbs in DNA. My job as a comedian is to pick up these breadcrumbs and put them in a format whereby you don't necessarily get angry, you don't get upset, but you go, and you laugh at the irony. We don't look for the irony in a Joe Manchin or the other. We don't go back and go, well, where did this come from? You know, there's a. I don't know how many viewers you have, but I'm gonna throw this out. I don't know if you ever read the book Monster about Monster Cody Scott. He was a gangbanger, and he tells his story. It's a little crude, but it makes a point. He tells his story, Mark, about them finally catching a rival gang member on a cell block. They get ready to beat him up, Mark. They get ready to do him bad. They're gonna put it on him. They're gonna work him, and they got him surrounded. They get ready to beat him, and the OG goes, wait a minute. He goes, look, you got two choices. You get stomped out, or and he takes a cup, he urinates in the cup, he puts it on the ground, he goes, or you could drink the urine. Mark, the dude drank the urine. Next word in the book, we stomped him out. My point is, if you're going to go out, stop drinking the urine. Stop drinking the urine. If you're going to fight. At least there's respect in the fight, Mark. At least it's like you can tell a story. You can tell a story in the infirmary or when you're healing up about, yeah, they got me, but I got a couple of them, because everybody's going to respect. Yeah, we jumped on him, but he didn't do that. There's people who choose the urine, Mark, and they don't fight. And well, I have to say this. There are people in the Democratic Party who have been around a long time. They've chosen the urine, Mark. Now, we may not have been there when they chose it, but they chose it. So when you're talking about Manchin and things like that, those are people who've compromised the party for very selfish means. But if you pull it back, you'll find out, you know what?
Well, they already knew. I think you made a good point about being strategic and intentional. They already know the people who are prone to do that, because where they're getting their resources from, the people who are providing them with resources, and because character like that just doesn't suddenly appear. It's there the whole time. They already knew that was going to be the case. It's not like all of a sudden someone jumps up and says,
his strategy. His strategy, Mark. I look at a Manchin. I got a Republican candidate. I realize my Republican candidate is going to lose. I see two Democrats. I see the one that is really threatening to what I want to do, and I see the one that's less threatening. I'm going to say, hey, listen, we're going to lose anyway. Let's put our money behind the guy who's going to be less threatening. That's the guy that you can manipulate. That's strategy, Mark.
Well, I think that there is some strategy that's going on here. And I think everything, an old manager of mine told me a long time ago, everything is not meant for everybody to hear. And I don't think you should do your negotiating or strategizing in public. I think once you come out in public and talk about the things the way we're talking about them, we're talking about, okay, activate and agitate. Be very specific, intentional with your strategies and what you're going to do, and tell people specifically what you're going to deliver to them.
Listen, if you're not down with the team, why do we keep sitting down with you, giving you vital information about what we're doing?
Well, let's say I guess when I say this is I'm saying when you have someone who's not going to vote your way, and the majority of the people are voting the other way, then you're going to get what you need to get out of them in order to at least get the majority or a good significant amount of what it is you want to deliver, while you think what you're going to be doing down the road to contend with this problem. But I think the public doesn't quite see it that way. All they see is You said you were going to give me 1, 2, and 3, and you haven't been able to do any of that. And you got this one guy who's got the same jersey I have on, and he's standing in the way of that. What are you going to do about that? Right? I mean, that's the simple part of it, right?
Well, hey, we always say, hey, man, if there's a guy that is on the team, he's hurting us. Not only does he not get in the game, he doesn't get to the arena.
Right. So I think
is there a way that this sounds like real LBJ-ish. This sounds LBJ-ish. But LBJ was a gangster. Well, really?
I think that's going on now.
But Biden needs to be like, really? Cut off the lights, close the door. Nobody's leaving the gym till we get this thing straight right here. Because this whole thing of like, let me go in with a very conciliatory tone, it doesn't work with these folks. Well, unless you are like the guy at the prison and goes, listen, these are your things. You can get stomped out. You can get the urine, or you can get stomped out. What you gonna do?
Well, I think this is
be a man and take the stomping. Right. Because that's part of the process. That's part of the struggle. When we give people alternatives, you give people alternatives outside of what's there. You can't say, hey, listen, you can do 1, 2. They go, no, I want to do 3 and 4. That's not what we talked about. That's not the premise. You got to fall in line. And if you got people that don't want to fall in line, you replace them. So I know it's an hour, bro. I won't hold you, man. I appreciate you having me on the show. I know some people are gonna preach a mark talking about.
I didn't talk about some other things I wanted to talk about. We've got some other good guests, but I brought you in right off the top, preacher. We didn't talk a lot about voting rights. We didn't cover some things you wanted to talk about in cannabis laws. We've got some good guests coming up, some good state senators and other folks on future shows. But I thought this was important that we started talking right. I didn't even give you your intro, man. You didn't need to the intro.
I'm your little brother. That's all you need to know.
Huh?
I'm your little brother. That's all they need to know. I agitate all the time. I irritate everybody. Ask anybody.
I'm going to leave people with a positive note.
Why you want to do that? No, I'm just kidding.
Activate, agitate. Make sure you're calling your congressperson to make sure that this voting rights legislation gets passed and it gets to the president's desk so people will sign it. We've got some great folks who come on the show, like Preacher Moss here, who's a fantastic, talented, intellectual writer, entertainer. He's done so many things. Make sure you take the time to go see all the things he's done with End of Racism, the original Allah Made Me Funny, the original OG of Muslim comedy.
Supreme, Anatomy of Gratitude.
Supreme, all this stuff that we didn't get a chance to go into any of that. But I'm gonna apologize to your audience.
My audience, I know it was an hour, but it was a very quick hour.
Oh, the hour goes by fast.
This was a jazz hour because Mark and I were riffing. We are channeling our Dizzy and our Diz and our Coltrane and our Mingus. This is call and response. This is how you bring people into the political process, Mark.
Bring them in.
We were on Mark's show, and doggone it, we were fishing like the NOI in 1950. We fishing. We need to take this on the road, Mark.
So as we get to the end of the show, I'm a little bit past the hour, but you know what? It's always a good thing. And I'm going to come back and make sure we end the way we started, right? And here we go. Is my guy here? Is my volume up? Can you hear Bob? Can you hear him?
Bro.
I think there he is. There it is. Well, folks, it's all over. The Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show live is over with our special guest, Preacher Moss. Oh, my. We had a great session. So come back and check it out on social media. Preacher, thank you for being there. And
Mark, thanks for having me, brother.
Thank you so much.
All right. Assalamu alaikum.
All right. Hang in there, man. Hang in there. Let me hit the end broadcast button. It's up around here somewhere. So you know when you're running a show, like
right.
You gotta do all these things, man.
You're right. Right corner, Mark. Right corner.